AAA games on the console for women. So I thought I should talk about what is really the differences in designing for the female market as opposed to the male market, and how you can take advantage of some of the research I've done. That's right, this doesn't work. So I will not be clicking through it that way. I'll click through it this way. Okay, so here's a fun little exercise. What gives away that a female did not design this public women's restroom? Anyone want to harbor a guess?
The seat. The little space for the guy to get a little gap right in the middle. Why would they need that?
Maybe. Other guesses?
The color scheme.
The color scheme? There's a missing feature.
Seat color? Yeah.
Anybody see it? Yep. If you want more female players, hire more female designers, because the subtle little tiny things are things that we think about that the guys may not think about. Like, oh, you really want someplace to throw away your tampons. Okay, this is real. So to avoid perpetuating gender stereotypes, this is not me, this is another poster. I gave my daughter a mix of dolls and toy cars to play with. This is what happened.
Let's see this. Put some to bed. That's awesome. You should run it, right?
Actually, I got a fail blog, but it was posted in a lot of locations. So the real lesson here is you can't control how gals will play, but you can support it. It doesn't matter that she gave her cars, she played with those dolls anyway. So I'm going to just have a very, very brief run over a couple of things. Don't do that.
Hey, your mouse is trying to work.
I agree. Work.
Just cancel.
Oh, no, not okay. Moving on. Challenge. So if you Google ironing, you get lots of pictures of pretty housewife types that are happily ironing, sometimes with or without kids, and sometimes some inept guys in their pictures. However, if you Google extreme ironing, you get lots of pictures of probably 90% men doing these really funky challenges of cliff diving, underwater ironing, on top of moving vehicles, other dangerous locations. Guys like to go for challenging things. This is an actual, I'm going to use a lot of actual psychology things throughout the very short talk. But in this one, they found that girls receive less criticism overall than boys do, and that high-achieving girls will receive less praise than other groups do. As a psychology, this means that there's no real pressure for girls to push themselves the way there are for guys, and there's no real sense of reward if you succeed in the end anyway. So what we end up seeing is that overall, those of you who are familiar with the design of flowcharts, we try to usually keep our games up and down throughout here. But in general, males try to gravitate more to the higher end, and women try to gravitate more to the low end. We want to take as much challenge as is necessary to not be bored, but as little as possible so we don't fail. Because as we saw, there wasn't much risk, there wasn't much reward to the risk. I did an article recently where I talked about this and got in trouble for not saying why. About 10 to 15% of females indicate challenge as a reason for playing games. The numbers will go upwards if they specify that it's women that self-identify as gamers or because they have a specific platform they're targeting. The highest number is 25%. That's still 75% of females that don't. Which means if you look at how many women there are in developed countries, 10%, that's still 63 million women in the world, which if you assume only a third of them have access to games, that's still more than the number of Modern Warfare 3 games that were sold. So when I talk about 10% of women being into challenge, that doesn't mean that only 10% of a game is women because it's a challenge-heavy game. It could still be 100% because 14 million is less than 21. All right, so how does knowing this about challenge affect the design? Well, here's a couple of very quick, easy things you can do to attract more women. Create a readily available easy mode and start at the lowest curve level for easy mode so that when you get to the end, you're now at the start level of normal mode. Same with normal to hard. Reward your players for achievements across all difficulties. Sometimes you'll see, oh, if you get the ending in easy mode, it's the bad ending. Only the ending in extreme hard mode is the good ending. So actually give them a complete rewarding experience no matter what challenge they choose for. And when you give them rewards, make sure that it's not just really unnecessary to the game. They want to see that there's some progress in the game. So they won't do a challenge simply for a challenge. Majority of them will want to see some other reason. I don't build a building because it gives me a platinum gold star achievement. I do it because it houses my things or builds something else in the city or does something. Failure. So Joseph and Brown found that women who were told in a test that a test would only measure weakness in math, those women were greatly outperformed by women who were told that a test would only measure their strength in math. Women tend to avoid failure, because if you saw with the challenge, we don't get much of a reward for going after things that are risky, so we try to avoid it. So when you look at the two genders overall, failure is treated as an obstacle to overcome by men, and it becomes a motivation to play by challenge. Whereas for women, that's a sign that we're over our heads, and we tend to set down the controller and walk away. Oh, this game is not made for me, because I failed. So, design secrets you can use. Incorporate soft failures. It's not game over, you suck, lose half your coins. It's, oh, reset the puzzle. Minimize any kind of sense of punishment. Don't take half my coins. Don't make me wait 15 extra minutes because I have to run and find something. Just, I didn't make it. And instead of criticizing, make it an encouragement. I like to joke about, it's like the Republican philosophy. It's not haves and have-nots. It's haves and soon-to-haves. It's not failed and succeeded. It's succeeded and it will succeed eventually. Keep trying. Try again, another quarter. Another one, cooperation or competition. Girls in grades 6 and 7 rate being popular and well-liked as more important than being perceived as competent or independent, whereas boys, on the other hand, feel that competency and independence are more important. That makes me kind of sad. When you look at the market research, about 70% of women report playing games as a means to socialize. Women in general have more of an interest, especially when we're younger, and it doesn't really go away, in worrying about what society and our peers think about us in ways of are you friendly versus are you a bitch, more than are you competent and somebody I should respect. And you can argue as to why that should be there, but we have to recognize that is a social and cultural aspect of this market. So cooperative, we see a lot of games that try to say, oh, well, it's cooperative because it's it's team versus team. So you're cooperative within your team, but then you're fighting each other. So it's really focused on the competitive. And even within those teams, we really care about, are you the one that's getting the most kills on your team? Do we care that you are the one that is not embarrassing the team, which is something a lot of women will end up worrying about substantially. Also issues of fairness. There's also concern about social risk in that when you put women in a randomized online space as opposed to dealing with other people that they know, it introduces social risk. At the worst case, maybe this person I'm introducing into my virtual life is a serial killer who will stalk me and come after me at work. At the least point, maybe it's a jerk who's going to just make my entire experience online and through the game very unpleasant. So just because you're putting them in a cooperative-esque play does not necessarily fulfill the socializing means. They want to socialize with people they know and in a substantial way. Another thing to keep in mind, this study from 2003 observed that in a puzzle-solving competition, very similar to games, where all performances are public, males outperform females in a co-ed environment, but when the genders are partitioned, the gap disappears. There are a lot of numerous psychological theories as to why this could be. The latest one is something called stereotype threat, which says that basically, if there is a concern anywhere or an idea anywhere that you could end up conforming to a stereotype, part of your brain, even if you're not around anybody that believes in it, will be worried and running cycles of concern about not adhering to the stereotype and thus distract you just enough to suck that little bit more and possibly fall into it because you're worried about it on some level. So, design secrets to worry about this. Allow for asymmetrical multiplayer gameplay. That you're not going to have most of the women on the co-op team that want to be the ones running out in the middle of the fray and doing melee. Allow them to be an equal partner if they are healers or supporters, for example, and create those supportive roles so that they can come in on that level. Make these all equal. And don't force players to measure themselves against one another. A very good example of something to look at is Dance Dance Revolution. If you know that old game, in the arcade mode, it had 3 modes. Single player versus and double. Double meant 1 player on both pads, single was 1 player, 1 pad, and versus was 2 players, 1 on each pad. When you saw the guys coming in, they always went straight to versus. Girls would come in who played it, they knew that you could play with your friends, and the first thing they do is always go to double, thinking that was the mode they wanted. I worked in an arcade where I had to tell them, you want versus, not double, and I'd have to explain it to them because they tried to fight, no, I don't want versus, even though that was the gameplay they really wanted. So that idea of I'm competing against somebody actually brought them out of the gameplay and made them uncomfortable. Now what it turned out is versus is you're supposed to compare your scores to each other, which the guys did. The girls compared their score to their previous score. So they measured their own progress against themselves, not against each other. It never even crossed their minds. Whereas the guys were always like, "Ha! I got an A. You got a B. You suck, sucker." So, so don't force them to put into a place where they are being measured. Allow for some kind of out. If you're going to have competitive play, that's fine, but you don't have to keep stats no matter what they do. Allow them a non-statistic keeping area. And a little parting wisdom, and also plenty of stories if there's no questions. Separate from equal is an important means. Just because it's different doesn't mean it's inferior. And unfortunately, a lot of devs that are not in the market they are working for will tend to kind of look down on the other market because they don't understand the fun in the gameplay that they want. So just remember, respect everyone the same. Okay. I hope that was fast enough. All right. Questions? Okay, oh, yeah.
So I've got a daughter at home, and I like to build games that are going to, be accessible to her. One of the things I find disturbing with this, with your presentation here, though, is like we should cater to the social preconceptions that you have had forced on you your entire life. That girls are better cooperating instead of competing. That these kind of things. Is there room to try and help women break out of that paradigm? And do you have any suggestions on that kind of?
So I'll tell you my philosophy on it. You can try to fight it if that's what your real goal of the game is, but at the same time, we don't really know how much of it is social impressions on kids and how much of it is actually kind of natural.
Biology.
Yeah, one of the things that psychology. One of the things that we see come into this is the male and female learning models tend to be different. Men tend to learn by doing and failing and trying again, which we see over and over in games. Whereas women tend to learn by being researchers. They learn up front and then they go into it. A lot of women won't even, in the psychological majority, won't even touch something that they're concerned about until they know it inside and out. We see that also in jobs, that women will tend to apply for jobs far below themselves because they need to know they can fulfill all the requirements, whereas guys will tend to overestimate their abilities for the job and go up.
Well, I'm just wondering, how much is that changing, especially and based on age groups as well? Because even little boys will sign up for baseball or t-ball, and there's no winner anymore, right? So is it a little bit more age dependent when you're looking at gender issues?
A little bit. A lot of it starts to appear right around age 11, but there are some things, and that comes back to we don't really know how much of this is social impression. There are some considerations when you look at different cultures where these things are consistent, even in matriarchal cultures and societies, and there's some where they're not. One theory that's been going around is this idea that because little girls or in this one study it said little girls are criticized 8 times less often than little boys, and in a different way. We tell little boys, get off the couch, you're going to break your neck, you stupid idiot. Whereas we tell the little girl, get down from there, you should have known better. And because of that, we're giving a preconceived idea that she should have that information beforehand, whereas he's just micro-optimizing.
I'm actually a teacher, so I like to just say part of this. A lot of this now is also coming from what's called nature and nurture type of stuff. So a lot of the new theories in that, they're changing everything to also make it more equal opportunity and everything. And they're trying to explain things more now because the psychological and everything. So a lot of them are trying to do the same thing where they're trying to get the girls to try it more, like they think the boys would try to do it, and they're trying to explain more to the boys like they would the girls.
Right.
So they're trying to see an experiment how these are actually working.
And my thing, I think those are good experiments to do, but I would say if you're dealing with, a 30-year-old gal like me, I'm comfortable with what I'm comfortable with, and the games are a sense of relaxation and fun. I shouldn't need to be reconstructing my entire brain thing when I just want to sit down and relax. So it's better at some levels to just give the market what they want and let them have fun and decide if maybe that makes them comfortable enough that their self-esteem goes up and you can encourage them in other ways or in other areas. And maybe it's not that important. We don't know.
I've got a question. You were saying before, like PvP is not really, direct PvP is not as it's not as well accepted
Right.
for women.
Right.
So you have games like Sorority Life, which are quite successful when they're like group PvP.
Mhm.
Do you know of any examples of like, one-on-one PvP in a kind of like
That's been
female
successful for
oriented
women? No. I've not seen that be really successful. There is an interesting story I'll kind of end with. So Daniel from Three Rings, back when they had Yo-Ho Pirates, the MMO, which was a casual game in an MMO space, and you got together to build ships and things by playing these casual PopCap-esque games. So he did a speech at I think it was Austin Game Conference, and he said, so we spent year developing PvP games, and we finally released them out, and you're going to fight, and by fighting you win points for your ship, and for your ship, for your flag, for your country, and you try to steal territory for your country by winning these PvP matches. What they found happened is after everybody was delineated to their own country was that the majority women, being the players for this, spent about 6 months on their forums and hashed out a peace treaty and equally divided up all of the territory throughout the game. Their response to the women, who seemed to really enjoy this breakdown of how do I go through the social negotiation process of creating a peace treaty, their response to this was, we're going to throw China in the mix and see if that screws things up. So they really wanted to force them to play under the PvP state, and that was clearly not what their market wanted to play, as opposed to recognizing there was a different kind of gameplay going on that they can support. So there are lots of little things like that that go on and have been going on in the market for years, and I'd suggest keep an open mind on them.
You have time for one more?
One more. What?
I'm sorry.
Oh, I should say, are your slides going to be available?
I
We do
think
make
so.
doubles, but, yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to add the annotations because I feel bad not saying who did what.
So your last slide, in your inspiration, that you said, Martin Luther King, separate people. The ladies in the room, is that something that you are okay with, especially your daughters and stuff? Because that is not something that I'm okay with. I'm not okay with, tailoring a game to lower expectations for women, or set expectations in a different way. Should we be engendering women to have that self-confidence that's more male-like? Should we be tailoring games?
See, I think
It's
that's
not
the
lowering,
problem.
it's different.
Yeah, I don't think it's lowering. I think it's different.
Separate but equal.
Separate but
is,
equal.
Is
is
that
a
an
loaded
acceptable
term.
state that
I think,
we like?
I think
Yeah.
the challenge is how do we create feedback that gives the right sense of accomplishment for both genders, and I think that's where the assumptions we've made in most cases have been by male designers primarily.
It may have something to do with my preconceptions also. Separate equal is a very loaded term.
Yeah,
It is,
that
but
one
it's
was
very
like,
applicable.
yeah, it's
Yeah, it
words
has its
are
own
probably
connotations.
But
But-
in 15 years,
Yeah,
my
I
daughter
mean,
is playing
it's-
FPSs.
It's
Yeah.
biological. I mean, like I went to a women's college, so, it's one of those things where it was like pro women. But if I'm in games research, and women and men play games differently, and it has nothing to do with sort of societal development. It's really biological about how their brains are wired.
Yes.
yeah.
So
and
I
what
agree
gives
with,
them,
I agree with you guys. It's totally loaded, but, and there's really that 20% of women that play like men.
Yep.
There definitely are.
Although, with
And-
that said, I think
and
it's
a lot of
slightly
men play
changing.
like women, so.
Yeah,
Isn't it
it
changing
will.
a little bit with the number
A
of
little.
girls participating in sports?
Yeah.
I have to
A
say.
I
little
was
bit.
gonna open up the bar to,
Maybe it'll change
player
in 15
type,
years as
let's
those
get away
girls
from
I'm with you.
total gender mapping and let's find norms that are across.
Which is